Hello, I'm John. Welcome back. So today I wanted to talk about a few potential reads for June on the Range, the great June event created by Michael K. Vaughan to encourage reading Westerns. And so I have quite a few of them, not as many as some people. Some people have huge stacks of Westerns. My grandpa has huge stacks of Westerns, probably hundreds of them, has read thousands of them over the years. Me, I've probably read 10 of them, 15 of them, something like that in my life. I've enjoyed a few, I haven't enjoyed some. I tend to be more of the shoot 'em up variety, or Lost in the Desert, that kind of thing. So I just thought that I would go through some potential reads. Most of them are fiction, one of them is nonfiction, and I guess I'll talk about it first because I think it's kind of neat myself. It is They Died with Their Boots On by Thomas Ripley. True tales of gunslinging desperados and hard-riding lawmen. Let's see what it says here on the back. Wanted, John Selman. Little talk and much gunpowder. He walked into the night and El Paso streets roared with gunfire. Joe Foster. Thin fingers that dealt Bart Farrow in sudden death, but his own pistol played a stacked deck on him. Bill Longley. Ruthless pistolman, handsome deceiver. He was standing with a cigar in his mouth when they dropped him 6 feet at the end of a rope. John Wesley Hardin. A charmed life. But one day the dice fell sixes and his back was turned. His blood trickled through the dust on the saloon floor. So I meant to read this last year for June on the Range and I just didn't get around to it. But this one's definitely on my list this year. I do want to get through this one. And this book is older. It's from the 50s, I think. Let me see. Okay, no, this one's from 1964, but it was first printed in 1935. So that's pretty neat. And then the rest of these, I'm not sure which ones I'm going to try to read and which ones. There are a couple that I want to read, and I think I'll talk about them first. I'm going to try to get to these at least. So the first book is Edge the Loner by George G. Gilman, and this is the first one, I think. I have read an Edge book before, but it was a long time ago. It's probably 10 years ago, and I've always been meaning to get back to the Edge books. So I think my grandpa has read all of these. These are pretty hard to find. I've only found a couple since I've been looking for them, and the other ones I've read, or that I think I have another one here. Yeah, there's another one in this stack. My grandpa gave me that one years ago. So the next one I'm going to try to get to is The Empty Land by Louis L'Amour. And this one sounds pretty interesting. Matt Colburn had cleaned up tough towns before. He knew what to do and how to do it. Above all, he knew who to kill and when. But this time the odds were stacked against him. He was facing every kind of gunman, knife artist, dry gulcher, and tin horn there was, and he was alone. Now he was sure of only one thing. The gutters would run with blood before law came to confusion. And there's Louis L'Amour. And so the thing about L'Amour is he wrote so many books, you never really know whether you're going to pick up one that's a real winner or kind of a dud. Or the last one I read was Catlow, and it was kind of in between, but it was way more violent than I expected. Sometimes L'Amour could be pretty violent. In some of his books, he seems pretty tame, but in Catlow, some of the violence was pretty serious. And here is Longarm and the Mexican Lineup. So I could have saved this one for Garb August, and actually I did almost read this for Garb August last year, but I didn't get around to it because I read a few books for Garb August and they sort of overpowered my senses, and I was just kind of like, no, I can't do this anymore. And so I didn't get around to it, but I'm hoping to get around to it in June. So let's see what this one is about. A Land of Savage Justice. Longarm's the only one who can identify the bandit they call El Anguila del Desierto, the desert eel. It's been a few years since Marshal Long first hauled the slippery crook in.
but the Mexican rurales will line their 5 best suspects in front of a firing squad's wall unless Longarm can pick out the genuine article. So Longarm heads off for the border. It's a treacherous trail that matches him against fast guns, hostile authorities, and some very friendly women on both sides of the Rio Grande. Don't miss others in the series. So I have kind of a funny story about these. So my grandpa reads Westerns. He reads a lot of things, but he's read a lot of Westerns. And one time my dad, when he was in his 30s, so a little while ago now, about 50, this has been, I'm not sure, probably about 15 or 20 years ago, my dad asked my grandpa, he wanted to start reading again, so he asked my grandpa for some books, some Westerns, and my grandpa loaded him up like a box of Westerns and sent him home. And my dad had been watching his dad read Longarm for years. And so my dad started reading a Longarm book. And so Longarm is kind of like a dirty Western series. And my dad started reading a Longarm book, and he was like, oh my God, my dad's been sitting in the living room all these years reading porno books. And, so it's just kind of funny. I thought it was funny anyway. But so Longarm is a dirty Western, so it could fit in June on the Range. It could fit in Garb August. I'm going to try to read it June on the Range, and if I don't, I'll save it for Garb August. And so these others are ones I may get to, I may not, and it just depends. So we have Tucker by Louis L'Amour, Buckskin Run by Louis L'Amour. I think these are stories. Let's see. Yes. And you know, I tend to like Louis L'Amour's stories better than I like his full novels. That's not always the case, but I really think that L'Amour was really good at writing short stories. And he didn't just write stories about the West. He wrote them about boxers and hobos and adventurers out in Asia and all kinds of things. Really interesting, some of his stories. And a lot of them taken from his actual real life experiences, just kind of embellished. And L'Amour was an interesting guy. If you've never read his autobiography, it's called, I want to say it's called Autobiography of a Wandering Man, or no, it's called The Education of a Wandering Man. The hardcover is like silver with his picture on it. It's a really good book. You may not believe me, but that's worth reading. And okay, here is another Edge Western. This one's number 40, Montana Melodrama. Let's see. The Campbell gang are ruthless professionals, looting, burning, stealing whenever it's convenient, and staying out of reach of the law, slippery as eels. But the Campbells make a big mistake when they cross Edge's path, trying to double deal him before heading off to hide in the hills. But Edge will find them when no one else can. Here's one man not frightened to pull a gun on a band of vicious outlaws, especially when there's a stash of cash at stake. So Edge is a pretty violent guy. So the next book is Yellowhorse by Dee Brown, who also wrote Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. And I have read half of that. I've been meaning to go back and finish that someday. I just haven't gotten around to it. The next is The Oxbow Incident by Walter Van Tilburg Clark. Hangman's Creek by Matt Braun, or maybe it's Brown. Let's see. Life in the Texas Panhandle was deadly for the cattlemen. Over the past year, hundreds of horses were stolen from the local ranchers, and the law was powerless to halt the thievery or the violence. But Luke Starbuck, cold-blooded and fast with a gun, was hired to hunt the outlaws, and there was no law high enough to stop him. His orders? Break the rustlers' scheme, run them down and see justice done, even if it was at the end of a gun. Well, it's the Old West. How else could it be done? Here is Last of the Duanes by Zane Grey. I've had this book for like 15 years now, and I haven't read it. And I think that's because I'm afraid there might be kind of a cheesy romance involved, and that kind of turns me off of books. I don't know if that's a fact, but that's kind of what I think. Okay, this is Salvation Gap and Other Western Classics by Owen Wister, who wrote The Virginian, which is right here. It's also on the list, The Virginian by Owen Wister. So this is short stories, and this is a novel. I think Wister actually saw the Old West with his own eyes. So these ought to be pretty interesting. I've never read Owen Wister before, but those are the last two books. The Virginian and Salvation Gap and Other Western Stories. Oh, Other Western Classics by Owen Wister. So that is my pile of possibilities for June on the Range, and I'm not sure how many of these I'll get to, and I hope that you will take part in June on the Range too. It's a really great event. If you've never read a Western before, you may kind of have like a stereotype idea of them or something of that nature, but they can surprise you. They can be very good. And so if you've never tried a Western before, I would encourage you to try at least one. And if you find one you don't like, try another one. And I bet eventually you'll find one that you like. So, okay. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.